guys, and welcome to part 2 of the making of the Haruhi Suzumiya cheerleader outfit, where we're actually going to be sewing the top together. Now, what we have here is top stitching the blue and yellow lines on that we pinned on at the end of the last video. Try and do this really slowly if you can, and try and get it to be really neat and stitch near the edge. What you don't want is to have your stitch line wandering all over the place, because it's just going to end up looking a mess. Because it's top stitching, so it will be seen, so, you know, just try and keep things neat. Again, this is where the matching colour threads will come into play. Try and use the blue thread for the blue and the yellow thread for the yellow, because as I said, because it's top stitching, the stitching will be seen. So if you were going to use the blue thread on the yellow, then you would have this random line of blue in the middle of the yellow. So yeah, once you've sewn your lines on, as you see here, you've got to pin the front to the back of the top at the side seams and at the two shoulder seams. And then you just sew that with the white thread. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hem the bottom of the top and the armholes. So you just turn the top up about ½ inch, a bit more if you feel you need to, depends how long you've cut it, depends how much you feel you need to take it up. If you have an overlocker, it might be an idea to serge stitch the bottom of the top before you hem it, just because it makes it a little bit neater. So yeah, just pinning that up and then again stitching it. I was using a part of the foot of my sewing machine as a marker, so I knew what distance I was stitching. So if you can do that, that would be great. If you can't, feel free to use a tape measure to mark out the line with a pencil, just so you get that consistent line going round. Because of course there's going to be the line of stitching on the outside that's going to be seen. Then just repeating the same process with the armholes, again turning the fabric in about ½ inch, pinning it in place, ready to sew. Now I would actually show you the entire process of sewing these armholes, but my camera actually cut out and I had to wait for the battery to recharge, so I just, sewed them and didn't bother to re-record it. But it's basically exactly the same as doing the hem. Okay, so again, I had to wait for my camera to charge, and all I've done here with the neckline is I've sewn the front to the back on both pieces, as you can see, and then just pinned them together with the right sides together. 知らず And so you just pin round the inside and then you stitch that. Now what I'm doing here is called clipping the curves, and what that basically means is you trim close to the seam, especially when you've got a curved edge, so that when you turn the piece that you're working through, that the seam will sit straight and properly, because otherwise, if you didn't, you'd have an awful lot of fabric bunched under the seam and it would make it sit wonky. Now normally you do this by cutting triangles along the edge of where you've sewn, but I used zigzag or pinking scissors, to cut close to the seam. Just again, be careful not to cut through the seam. If you do, don't panic, just stitch over it a little bit and it should be fine. So yeah, so you turn it through and then you start pinning it to the top. Now this is going to be a little bit awkward, especially at the front apex of the V, but don't worry, we'll sort all that out in a minute. Match up the shoulder seams, where you've got the same seam on the shoulders of the white top and in the neckline. Again, it might take a little bit of easing because it's going to be a bit awkward, because again we're working with curved edges here where one piece is essentially curving one way while the other is curving another. But once it's stitched together, it'll all work out. So just run that through your machine. Always be careful that you're not trapping, the wrong part of the top underneath where you're sewing, because otherwise you'll have to unpick it and do it again. One area I found that I had to be really careful with was when I was going over the shoulder seams where the white part is really thin, where it was really easy for the white to fold under where my needle was going to be going. And so just keep double checking where the white is sitting underneath the blue. So after you've trimmed your threads, what you do here is you go to the apex of the front V on the white and you take your scissors, pull the fabric out because it will have bunched, because you're basically forcing it to go around a corner and there's not enough fabric. So what you do is you just clip a line right to the apex point of the stitching, and what that does is it allows the white to pivot around that point so that when you turn it through, it sits perfectly. And there you have a picture of what the top is looking like. Pretty much finished. Now just so you're aware, in the next part where we're going to be covering the skirt, I'm not actually going to label it as being part of the Haruhi Cheerleader tutorial, because I'm going to refer back to it to a bunch of other uniforms, because pleated skirts are so common, but I will link it as a video response, so you should be able to find it really easily. See you in the next bit.